introduce our guest. We have a very interesting panel for this session, and I would like to ask our speakers to introduce themselves, say briefly who they are and where they are, and then tell us about their relationship with Monsignor. So I would like to start with a very close friend of Monsignor, Mr. Michael Sean Winters. Sean?
I'm Michael Sean Winters. I'm a columnist with the National Catholic Reporter, and I also am the U.S. Correspondent for the Tablet in London. I've known Lorenzo. I met Lorenzo in 1992, and we became very fast friends very quickly. Do you want me to go on and do the whole storytelling, or do we just introduce ourselves at this time?
Yes, no, please go on.
Okay. So I was thinking about which story to relate, and I'm sure, like many of you who knew Lorenzo, we miss him so much. Like, he would be such a wonderful commentator on the papacy of Francis, such a fascinating commentator on the state of American politics at this time. And at the intersection of the two, the estuary where religion and politics meet, was where his brilliance shone, I think, in a really rare and unique way. And so I remember one day talking to him about my on-again, off-again relationship with the Sixth Commandment. And he said, Mike, he was the only person who ever called me Mike. I hate being called Mike. But you couldn't correct Lorenzo. Like, you'd say, I don't like being called that. And he'd still go, oh, okay, Mike, I got it, And he said, when Augustine tells us that the conjugal act between a man and a woman married, open to procreation, even this is stained by the sin of concupiscence, he's really telling us something very liberating. And it took me a while to figure that one out. But one of Lorenzo's great crusades in life, which we need now, and we miss his voice so much on, is to stop reducing religion to moralism. And on the right, it is usually reduced to this, kind of conformity to either a political ethic or and certain sexual codes. On the left, it's reduced to a certain social justice ethic and the politics that go with that. And the problem with it, obviously, is we can save ourselves from some of the social justice issues. There's Sexaholics Anonymous, but at the end of the day, we always need a savior. And I think Lorenzo was so good at introducing people to this savior who was real and large and saved us from the human condition. And no matter how good we are, no matter how well behaved, no matter how attentive, no matter how woke, we still need a savior. And I think Lorenzo captured that savior and related him to people as the person who walked this earth as Jesus of Nazareth and the Son of the Virgin in a way no one else I've ever known could capture. And that was where the sense of mystery came in. I write, every day, and it is a great temptation to try to explain away every mystery. And he balanced that sense of the mystery and a real respect for the mystery with this incredible inquisitiveness. He did want to get to the bottom of things, and how those in combination brought him to be a real evangelist and a real person who could introduce people to Catholicism in ways that they were not repelled. I mean, a lot of people, if you go online and you find some sermons that are being preached in this country of ours, some of them are repellent. And that was not Lorenzo. The other thing that has come up, there are certain people going around doing all these exorcisms, and in exorcist, the guidelines for a bishop to choose an exorcist say that he must be very holy, and it explains holiness this way. And I always think of Lorenzo with this: that in an exorcism, the devil will hold up a person's sins to them to invite them to despair of God's mercy. So holiness is not being well-behaved little boys and girls. Holiness is never despairing of God's mercy. And Lorenzo had that, and he communicated that. And And I think that's a real rare. I don't think we understand holiness in America. We're so practical. We're so act-centered. We're so code-oriented. And it has nothing to do with that. It has the willingness to cling to the cross of Jesus Christ. And Lorenzo did a better job explaining that to people who had no religion previously, but even especially to Catholics who thought they had it. And they had a kind of, my friend Kathy Caveney always says, anybody today with an internet connection, a copy of the catechism and an attitude thinks they're a theologian. He was especially good at explaining who Jesus Christ was to the people who were a little too self-satisfied for their own good, including myself. So that was, I miss him every day. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next panelist.
Thank you, Sean. Now I would like to let you with the Pollacks, Amy and Robert Pollack. I've been waiting for this one the whole weekend because they knew him as a scientist. As we all know, Lorenzo was a scientist, and Robert and Lorenzo had these beautiful conversations about science that I was privileged once to witness. So I am eager to hear what you have to say.
Hi, Amy Pollack. I'm an artist, and with my husband, we have a book on evolution, and we're also Jewish. And Lorenzo he continued with us as he knew a lot about our religion, and we knew a lot about his, and we all felt very much related. And what I have to say about Lorenzo is I can't remember anything specifically, but I do remember thinking of him as loving people, and you knew it. And it was very simple. He was very relaxed with us. He smoked. He knew good food. We always went to absolutely fabulous restaurants. And I thought to myself, when I saw how much he cared about his younger brother, and also hearing that when he died, his last word was amen, I thought, well, I've just known a holy man. And that's what I have to say about him. And I loved him very much, and I still do.
Thanks, Amy. I'll watch the clock. My background, as I've been introduced, and as some of you may know, is that I'm a molecular biologist. Lorenzo was born 4 months after I was born, and we have very similar starts. He was born thinking himself a scientist, becoming a scientist, and then joining the church. And I was born thinking myself a scientist, becoming a scientist, and then marrying Amy. I remained a scientist as a way to be a professional, but from the beginning of our marriage till now, which is 60 years this year, I have understood through my marriage and through my life, well before I met Lorenzo in 2002, that all the interesting questions I may ask of nature that science may address, none of them are as interesting as the questions that come to mind that I cannot come up with a testable, disprovable hypothesis to do an experiment about. The fact of mortality itself means that we are all obligated to decide what's most important, and there is no science to tell us what is most important. There is, however, sociality, exchange of views, safety, trust, love in a four-letter word. And I would agree with Amy, the thing that came across from Lorenzo from the beginning was love. He was the most affectionate, funny, caring guy I had in my life, including my father and the people who were my mentors. He was the best friend I ever had. So I want to just say the way I came to meet him speaks of America. I had written a book in 2000 called The Faith of Biology and the Biology of Faith, in which I said, as a scientist who had worked with James D. Watson of Watson and Crick, and who was a professor of biology at an Ivy League university, none of the questions that science can answer is as important as any of the questions that science can't answer. that there is knowable but unknown, and knowable and unknowable, that beyond what is unknown yet but knowable is like at the other side of a sea of unknown is what is intrinsically unknowable. And Lorenzo heard that as sufficient of an overlap that his Catholicism and my, at that point, rudimentary but growing Judaism were not a separation. They were rather, as he put it to me, my people are the older brothers of his people, and we were one family. And the way we are one family is not in dogma, and it's not in received truth. It's in the safety of trusting each other and the love of each other that allow us to take the risk of admitting we don't know something important. And we're not going to figure out something important by being smart. Lorenzo, in other words, was, for all of his funniness and for all of his, I would say, bluster at some points, the most modest person I have met to have been a scientist successfully, and then to have been a colleague of Pope's as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you expressed very well something that I think and that can be misunderstood often. I have heard comments of people that understand that he left science to become a priest, and instead, like, he was always a scientist. Like, he became a priest precisely because he wanted to go to the bottom of everything, not only science, but he wanted to know everything.
Camille, can I respond to that 30 seconds more, please?
Yes, sure.
If those of you who are watching who don't know of Lorenzo's book, God at the Ritz, please see if you can find it on Amazon, get it out of a library. It's an extraordinary set of some 30 short essays on what he calls an attraction to infinity. It came out in 2003, and I was stunned when somebody came to me and gave me a copy of the book and said, look at chapter 10. Chapter 10 was about my book, The Faith of Biology and the Biology of Faith. And here is a scientist who admits that what's not knowable is as important or more important than what science can know. And then I looked him up and he looked me up, and that's how we became friends. The real backstory here is we don't have any people in common. Now we do. I mean, my goodness, Olivetta is wonderful. But when this happened, Lorenzo found me, and then I found him, and we came from worlds that did not overlap. I only hope that communion and liberation can be a place where these worlds can continue to overlap, because it's so important.
Thank you so much for that. Now we will go to our next guest, that is Rebecca CHERICO. Rebecca?
Sorry, just muted. Hi, so I'm Rebecca CHERICO, and I think I first knew Lorenzo very vaguely because he and my father taught at the John Paul II Institute together. But that was a sort of vague peripheral awareness of him. And then it was only later when he started his involvement with the movement with communion and liberation that I started to get to know him. And in some ways, I mean, this may seem strange for those of you who are very close to him from the beginning, like he could be kind of intimidating. And one of the things about him that really strikes me tremendously is his ability to surprise. I was thinking about that when watching the video about him, because I don't think I've ever met anyone who was more capable of surprising you in any moment. I don't think I ever knew anyone who was as funny and as faithful at the same time, right? And so in a given circumstance, you kind of never knew which aspect of his personality was going to come forth. He actually said my wedding, and I wasn't sure. I thought, you know, in this sermon, is he going to be like the serious Albacete and talking about the theology of what's happening, or is he going to be the funny Albacete? And actually he was both, because he told this story about another priest, not himself, who started a wedding and at the beginning accidentally started saying the wrong words, and someone said, oh, actually that's the wrong sacrament. That's a funeral you're saying, not a wedding. And he's like, same difference. And that was how he began my wedding, the wedding sermon, by talking about the similarity of the sacrifice of marriage and death. But you know, it was actually really beautiful and really true. And it was a great, it was a great way to begin in a strange sort of way. And I was thinking about what Amy and Robert were talking about with Lorenzo's tremendous capacity for love. And I was thinking that one of the most striking places that emerged was in his mercy. One of the things that Camille said during the video that really struck me, you said more than once, Camille, how Albacete was always himself, right? He was never like anyone else. And I was thinking there's some people who are themselves in a really kind of obnoxious way, right? Like they have no self-awareness. And so they're just always themselves because they can't help but be themselves, and they don't care about what anyone else is thinking. And Lorenzo was funny because he was very much himself, right? He was a real character. And at the same time, he had this self-awareness. He wasn't unaware of the effects that he had on people or the presence that he had. And so he was even able to wear himself lightly, right? And he had this irony about himself and about circumstances. And this was really dramatic for me once when a very close friend of mine from a very faithful Catholic family got pregnant before she was married. And it was a sort of dramatic situation. And I thought she should go talk to Lorenzo. Like, that's the person I want her to go see. And, you know, here she was feeling kind of awkward and uncomfortable, and she didn't really know him. And they sat down to lunch and they were eating, and she explained to him the situation. And he said, you know, with his enormous belly, he was like, yes, I've often wondered myself if I wasn't pregnant. And it just totally changed like the whole tenor of the conversation. And she was just suddenly relaxed. And this whole dramatic dynamic was sort of, you know, dissolved. And that was this sort of amazing mercy that he had in looking at you. It wasn't that nothing mattered, right? It wasn't just that nothing was important, but that the love was greater than anything else. So yeah, those are the things that really stood out to me most thinking about him.
Thank you, Rebecca. About what you say is so true. He was not imposing, even though he was not unaware of how much people loved him. When I left New York to go to Washington to start a PhD. I always wanted to be a professor, but I didn't know how to tell him. And so when I told him, he already knew. And I told him, like, I know I'm a traitor, I know. And he was like, well, hell yes, you are. But then he said, I wish I could convince myself that it's okay to tell you something that will make you feel so bad for leaving me that you would remain. But I can't do that. I understand that you have to go live your life. And so yes, he felt it, like he wanted to grab people somehow, and he knew he could, but he loved you so much that he would let go of this immediately. Like he wouldn't put a weight on you like that. And now for our last guest of today, Vittorio Cipolo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really an honor. I'm very, very happy that I can spend a few minutes talking about my experience in knowing Monsignor Albacete. I'm originally from Italy, but now I live in Canada. Before coming to Canada 15 years ago, I spent 2 years in Texas for my Master of Science at Texas A&M University. It was between 2002 and 2004, and that's when I met Monsignor Albacete. It was, let me say, the beginning of the experience of the CLU in the United States. We were having vacations and meetings all around the States, and he was always there with us. So that's where I met this man, larger than life, incredibly funny, with a tremendous sense of humor, but especially with a huge joy, a joy that did not stop in front of anything, not even the scandal that sometimes he would create, but an incredibly huge joy. That's how I met him, incredibly simple at the vacation. We decided, it was only two of us at Texas A&M University, me and my friend Luca, and we decided to invite him down to have a talk, to talk to us and to the people that by that time we met at the university, so that they could meet him and they could meet the movement. And so he decided to come down, and that was already amazing. And he spent 2 days with us. So what I would like to tell you is just a few points that I remember very vividly from those 2 days together. First of all, the fact that he decided to come was already amazing to us. But then we discovered, with great amazement, that he came to stay with us. We tried our best to make him, come and meet other people before the actual meeting, before the actual encounter. But he repeatedly said very explicitly, guys, I came to stay with you. You are the only two people I want to see beside the one that we will meet at the meeting. I really want to stay with you. And so he was so explicit in telling us that he cared about staying with us. But then he was absolutely clear in his gestures, in everything that we were doing. We ended up spending 2 days roaming around the university, going to the stadium, to the cafeteria, to the library, to the store where he bought a pen. And so everything he did testified that he really cared about spending the time with us. He was really there. He was really there for us. I mean, everybody. The other thing that surprised me very much during those 2 days was his honesty in front of everything. Never in those 2 days he gave the impression that he came down to teach anything or to instruct us of anything, even if we were actually waiting for him to tell us something that would shed a light on everything that we were doing there. He really came out of a desire to discover what those 2 days could have meant for his life. Everything that he was doing with us became a point of a discussion, a point of a discovery. He was searching for that mystery that he was always searching for in everything that was happening. Again, in the library, in the cafeteria, in the stories he was telling us. If you haven't looked at the video, the show, I strongly suggest you go there. There are 2 points that are incredibly beautiful. One is on mystery, is desire of finding what's beyond everything, that thing that keeps calling you, and that you keep finding in what doesn't satisfy you fully, and that you keep searching for. And the other one is on humanity. He loved humanity in the sense that he was interested in us because he wanted to see how through us he could meet this mystery. This is what conquered me the most. I heard a lot of testimonies on him, especially in these 2 days, and everybody said how incredible he was with people. He had a way to enter in a relationship with people, and he could communicate incredibly well. He had a tremendous knowledge. He could talk about science and art and beauty like nobody else. But what conquered me the most was that he was himself so much that in every moment he was looking, searching. He knew his condition and he was searching for that mystery. So in a sense, he conquered me because I find him being a friend, like somebody walking like me. I mean, I was 23 at the time, and he was in a different state of his life, but he was searching. We went to Mass. We came out of Mass just before the meeting, and I rushed to prepare the room. My friend Luca stayed with him, and he told me later on that Albacete was asking him, smoking out behind a tree. He was asking him, but what we said at Mass, is it true? Is it really true? Is this mystery really incarnated? Is it true? And it was a question, a very honest question, no doubts in his mind, but really, the exemplification of everything that he was, this continuous search, this amazing search for which everything in front of him was interesting. So even my humanity, my broken humanity, his broken humanity, he conquered me because he had this sense of brokenness that never stopped him. Like Michael Sean said, he never despaired in front of that was his holiness, in front of his brokenness. We entered the meeting room for the meeting at night with everybody, and there was a room with probably 35 students that we met along the way and that decided to participate. And Lorenzo started this show like he always does. He usually started every meeting by thanking the sponsor. In that case, I think it was a Dr. Pepper on the table, so he thanked the sponsor. Everybody was laughing, and swear to God, we prepared the meeting, and I was asking him, please stay in the 30 minutes so that the priest, Father Mike, which was the priest of the parish of the university, can also talk and give his testimony. Sure enough, he didn't care about that. He went for 55 minutes, 30 of which were absolutely outrageous jokes. I mean, I swear to God, down in Texas, it was, I mean, incredibly funny. One of the jokes, just to make you understand the shock that he provoked to people, it was a period in which, I think at Columbia University, I don't remember, but people committed suicide, few students committed suicide by jumping down the roof of the library. And I remember he said something to the extent of, now when I go out of my university, I need to look up to make sure that nothing falls on me, because you never know in these days. And so, oh my God, I was there listening to it. The room was silent. He was the only one laughing. And so he created that shock. But like Lisa Licona, the editor of the new book, The Relevance of the Stars, which I just bought because I can't wait to read his essays in that book, she said it very well. She was shocked, but shocked immediately gave space to attraction. Immediately after this outrageous joke, the seriousness with which he was talking and he was expressing his, the way he was living, immediately attracted everybody. So he spoke for an extensive amount of time. I remember being worried at a certain point that the meeting was about to be over and there would be no chance for the other priest to talk. Eventually, Albacete stops. I turned to the other priest, to Father Mike, a little bit guilty because I was the moderator and, I'm sorry, I brought this stranger and he took the stage. I turned to Father Mike, and I say, Father Mike, can you please give us your testimony? And Father Mike, I remember incredibly well, and I think exemplifies really the impact that Albacete had on people, was looking at Albacete and say, Vittorio, I'd rather listen to him. Can you please, Monsignor, can you please continue? This was incredible. It was exactly my position in front of him and the position of all the other students eventually later on. We would have rather listened to him continuously because of what was happening in front of our own eyes. A humanity in place that, notwithstanding the brokenness, was looking and searching for that amazing mystery. That's it for now. I have many more, but.
Thank you, Vittorio. That was great. Our chat coordinator is telling me that we have some questions. So first we have Garrett. Please, Garrett, go ahead. He needs, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I was struck the other night by the panel when Monsignor Lorenzo was described as a man fully free, a man who had found an unusual level of integration of faith and life, especially through his encounter with Father Giussani. This was a search for him. There was a development in him. I wonder if the panelists could comment on this journey of his to integration and wholeness, especially through his encounter with Father Giussani.
Robert wants to answer to that. Yes, go ahead.
To give an answer from the side, because I did not know Father Giussani, but my friend Anthony Lekic, a physician at the Terence Cardinal Cook Hospital for people who will not get better, and I were with Lorenzo at the end of his life. And we saw in him, as he spent those last months, weeks, and days, concern for his brother, concern for the movement, concern for us, a coming together around his life's end without it being about him. I don't know a larger, more profound example of his gift of love than his availability to Anthony and me when he was dying. That's my answer.
Any of the other guests wants to comment about that?
In the video, there is a point in which there's a letter by Monsignor Albacete to Father Giussani, and he tells Father Giussani that in living with the people of the movement and in meeting him, all his theological syntheses became together, and it was through the experience of a new life, not just a thought. That to me was incredibly beautiful, because and Cardinal Scola in the same video says it very, very well. Lorenzo had an incredible intelligence, a man of science, a huge culture, and he changed. He found something, an experience of life that was the synthesis of all of his theological thinking, and this synthesis came through the experience of a life, not anymore a thought. I think that he expressed it so well in that point, and then from there it became his life, a new method starting from experience. I don't know if he answers your question, but I found it incredibly beautiful. And if you look at the video, there are 2 letters, I think, in the video that talks about this incredibly well.
Thank you, Vittorio. I would like to make a comment about that, and sharing life with him on a pretty much daily basis. What I would like to flip this question. What I saw was a man that didn't see any division. Like, for him, the incarnation meant that everything was one thing, and that this history that God has started with man had to touch everything, material and not material. And I think I saw him live like always looking for that confirmation that in fact reality was united, that we were all called to be united because we were all God's children. And so I don't think he made an effort to integrate. I think he just did not recognize a division in reality. And I think what Giussani brought to him was like a big confirmation and an experience more than anything, that this was in fact true. We have another question. If I understand correctly, Patson has a question but is not able to unmute, so I have to read the question. So his question is to Michael Sean, and the question is, how unique was Lorenzo's ability to relate to people of opposing political views? A unique, rare gift nowadays.
Well, there's been a lot of polarization since the 90s when I first met him. Back then, you could still get people together. But that disarming quality that all of us have described in different ways. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, there's great videos of him doing conversations with Christopher Hitchens when Hitch was at his most like anti-religious crusade, full throttled. And the first time they met was at my dinner table. I used to have these big long dinners and and Hitch would come in and first of all, Hitch wanted to be the center of attention at all times. And normally would have been, of course. But with Lorenzo, you could see like within seconds, Hitch it was completely back on his heels and falling in love. That this was not what he was expecting to meet a priest. And we had told him, he's funny, he's different from any priest you've ever met, really, you're gonna, and he walked in with a good bottle of wine and profound skepticism. And Lorenzo disarmed in a matter of seconds. And they, I think they had a dog and pony show for a while where they would go on. And again, I think it was the humanity, but it was also his willingness to cut through the nonsense, to cut through, you know, he did an interview with Robert Wright once, and he was and Robert was trying to, I wouldn't say trap him, but it was one of those questions. But St. Paul said, you know, unless you do this, and Lorenzo says, well, hey, I sign on to everything, but I would want to ask Paul, what do you mean by, you know, I mean, it was so classic Lorenzo that, hey, I sign on to everything, you know, that he would just change the point of reference in such a way that, you know, expectations are always like chains we put on other people, right? You know, and he blew whatever expectations you had out of the water the first time he opened his mouth. And so that was that freedom that we were just talking about. I remember when Cardinal George came back from the conclave in 2013 that elected Pope Francis, and they asked him, you know, how would you describe the Pope? And he said, you know, he's incredibly free. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's like Lorenzo, that quality that he has, that interior freedom that shines through, that makes you want to just love him. Lorenzo had that, and that's the connection there. On the political side, he could get along with everybody, but he would taunt both sides. I mean, that was the other thing. He would, you know, needle and make them say, you know, but this is not the kingdom, right? Politicians, they all want to, you know, enact the kingdom. And it's like, no. So it was great, but you know, he didn't have a how-to list. It was just, you know, showing up and being authentic and being real.
Thank you, Sean, for that answer.